So I have to follow Joe Rathburn, huh? Whose diabolical plan was that? Joe, you made me cry, and that's not cool right before I'm supposed to talk. Whew, what a confluence of wonderful things coming together today. The fact that I get to be here with all of you today is just such a beautiful gift for me. And the fact that I happen to just be on the same docket as Mr. Joe Rathburn, that's pretty sweet. And he and I will be here Thursday night playing Bob Dylan songs. Is it too soon in the bit for a plug? Too late. And it's also Father's Day and summer solstice. Those things don't always happen together. And that feels cosmically powerful somehow. I don't quite know why. So happy Father's Day to all of us and to everyone here. You know, listen, honestly, this is a little hard for me. I am not a father. And I always thought I would be. When I was a little kid, I imagined I'd have 6 kids and they'd all by now have grandkids. And it just never happened for my wife and I. And it's also a day of grief for a lot of us. I lost my dad 3 years ago, and for all of you that have lost your fathers, and you know, this is a day when all that comes up, right? So there's a lot in the air today. There really is. And it's all great. It's all okay. And I remember being in a different church than this a few years ago on Mother's Day. And I was there with my wife, and the minister there at that church did a very normal, wonderful thing. She asked all the mothers in the room to stand up so that we could honor them, and we all burst into applause, and they all stood there and beaming. And I looked around the room, and there were a handful of women not standing. And one of them was my wife. And I just saw this amazing, beautiful, creative, brilliant person sitting next to me, suddenly feeling a little ostracized from the sisterhood of womanly power that reminded viscerally in a very glaring public ritual of her inability, of our inability, to perform even the most fundamental elemental function of any biological organism, something fruit flies do, reproduce. Now look, I'm not claiming for Lori or myself any kind of victim status. The celebration of motherhood and fatherhood is not an affront to those who do not have children, obviously. They're two separate things. But I just wanted to acknowledge that and start with that today. We are not to mute the celebration of motherhood and fatherhood to coddle the wounds of the childless. Let's go big. Happy Father's Day, right on. But you know, it got me thinking, that experience in that other church got me thinking, what does it really mean to be a mother? What does it really mean to be a father besides the literal biological component? What is mothering? What is fathering? And so, you know, since many of us are not and will never be mothers or fathers, is there some metaphorical, archetypal sense in which we all mother, in which we all father in different ways? What does it really mean to be a father? Now, we somehow have more clarity around the notion of mothering. When we say mothering, we kind of know what that means. It's funny how it's just one little letter away from smothering, isn't it? I know. It's not my fault. Don't kill the messenger, you know. But so when we say mothering, we're like, yeah, we know what that means. But when you say to father or when you say fathering, that's a little more vague. We don't quite know what that is. Now, I may not be a father, but I had one, and I had a really good one. And I watched him really closely. And we all watched our fathers. That's the first shot you have at a front row seat on what fathering is, for better or for worse. And some of our fathers were men of outstanding character, you know, smart and kind and supportive and loving and brilliant and admirable and heroic. And some of our fathers were monsters, utterly incapable of loving anything or themselves. Just dysfunctional wrecks, dangerous even, some of them. And then there's the middle. There's all the dads in the middle who are like us, just muddling through, trying to do the best they can with what they do understand, and that's the span. So as I reflected for today's talk on what fathering energy is, I think I identified 5 qualities. There's more, but I think these are the 5 key characteristics of what fathering energy is. And even though I'm not a father, and many of us here are not, I believe these 5 qualities of good fathering apply to all of us. They are qualities or characteristics that we each have in nascent form, in latent form, to be cultivated. And I want to think about it through that line this morning. And of course, a disclaimer, these 5 qualities really don't have much to do with gender. Any sort of rolling definition of masculinity and femininity. And we know so much more now about gender as a continuum and not as a simplistic polarity. So let's keep this loose. So here are my 5 qualities that I think really matter in fathering energy. The first one's courage. Courage. For the ancient Greeks, courage was the most important virtue of all, because without it, none of the other virtues are possible. You cannot be compassionate without being terribly brave. Loving kindness is dangerous and high-risk behavior. It leaves you vulnerable to attack. It takes great courage, doesn't it, to move beyond self-interest and into truly caring, into altruism, into self-sacrifice. Tremendous courage. Now, it may be stereotypical to line it up this way, but I certainly remember this in some respects, that fathers are always encouraging you to climb the tree, and mothers are always telling you to get out of the tree. And both of them are right, of course. Nobody wants to see a child with a broken leg, but you also don't want to see a child terrified of life and equating any kind of growth with danger. And so those 2 energies are so crucial, aren't they? Now, in our own lives then, this component of fathering energy, this quality that I'm calling courage, this is the quality that allows us and challenges us, really, to take risks and to rip away all support systems and trust that there are larger forces at work and we're going to be all right, even if we occasionally fall. And by the way, speaking from my own experience, in my case, my mother was more the father than my father was on this point. She was the one always encouraging me to take risks. My dad was kind of quiet on the whole issue and pretty quiet on all other issues as well. But my mother was the one saying, Peter, go outside. She bought me a surfboard one time when I was about 7 and dropped me off at the beach and said, I'll be back in about 6 hours, figure it out. That's how she was. She knew there was this amazing world out there, and a certain amount of boldness is essential. And she knew me. She saw how withdrawn I was, how interior I was, how daydreamy I was. I would just sit and watch clouds blow by, and that was a good day for me. And so she thought maybe I ought to do a little bit more. So here's the second quality that I think fathering energy has to contain, and it's quietude. Quietude. And I mean by that a lot of different things, not only sort of silence, but stillness. And look, any parent or school teacher can tell you that typically girls are verbally way ahead of boys. And girls become sophisticated purveyors of verbal and written language, while boys are still sort of grunting and yelling incoherently in the playground. And this advantage ideally suits girls for school. This whole weird experiment that we've only been doing for about a century, right? Which is forcing children to sit in chairs in rows all freaking day long. Hold still, shut up, and do what you're told. We all know that public education is a good thing. I believe it is. I work in the business. But it's also true that public education, as it became institutionalized 100 years ago, is a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution, when great capitalists needed workers who could follow directions, read and write. And now I'm talking like a homeschooler up here, which isn't really my tribe either, but that's an interesting question, isn't it? So anyway, on this whole point, boys don't seem to fit in so well in public school in early years, certainly. And in adulthood, this pattern seems to hold. Men always seem strangely out of place wherever they are. A little uncouth, you dress them up in these things, but we're still just a little bit like animals, I think. So isn't it true that men just seem less capable or less interested, I don't know which, in verbal communication, generally speaking? These are generalizations, obviously. I'm pretty verbal. So we noticed this in our fathers, and certainly in my case. They never said much. As in Joe's song, brilliant song. That song kills me, Joe. But our fathers showed their love in other ways, in their constancy, in their presence, in the quality of their work, in the meticulous way they painted the mailbox every spring, the way they worked on the car and got on their knees and polished the rims, kept the lawn looking good, strange acts of devotion to the family architecture. And in our own lives, in our own fathering energy, quietude is powerful. It's a natural corrective, I think, to our innate tendency to overthink everything. When we have a problem, we want to tell everybody about it. We want to solicit everyone's opinion on what we should do. Now we have Facebook to do that. It's like, hey, does anybody know how to fix it? And everybody, so we all like to verbalize and our challenges, but our inner father doesn't want anything to do with any of that. He just wants to let go of all the chit-chat and get to work and take concrete steps that lead toward a solution. Look, it's good to talk, but talking can become an avoidance mechanism. Let's just talk about it some more. A way of hiding from the soul-shaking action that must take place. So by saying little, our fathers often modeled this powerful quality. By talking less, they said more. And in our father's silence, I think we found space in which to finally begin hearing our own voice. So may our own fathering energy give us this stillness and this space and this gift of quietude. So courage, quietude. My third quality that I want to spotlight with you is constancy. Constancy. A good father is always around. And when he has to be away for a while, he always comes back. His presence is as common as the North Star. You never have to wonder, you just know. It's just one less thing you have to think about. He'll be there. And his love is unconditional. He may be angry with you for some transgression, or he may even yell at you a little bit or withdraw. The two anger responses men do best, yelling and withdrawal. But you cannot shake him, and he will never give up on you. He devotes himself in the same way to everything that he loves, and every dad's different. For some it's sports or classic rock or fishing or whatever. For my dad, it was family and his wife. Devoted himself undyingly to those things. And he also loved classical music, and he loved his home, and he loved the beach, and he loved camping, and he loved writing, and he loved photography and film, and he stuck with all of those things his whole life. Constancy. Until Alzheimer's ripped them away from him one by one. So in our own lives, as we consider our fathering energy, the quality of constancy strengthens all of our endeavors. That consistency, that perseverance. It strengthens the bonds of our relationship We stick around even when things get awkward and sour. It lets others know we mean what we say. We're trustworthy, we're reliable, and our stick-to-itiveness feeds our dreams and builds them into tangible things. That's what constancy does for us. That's part of your fathering energy, too. The fourth one, I think, is competence. Competence. A good father knows how to do stuff. They're not perfect at everything, don't be ridiculous, right? But they really shine bright in some key areas. They can take stuff apart and put it back together again, or maybe they can scrub your hard drive and clean it of viruses, or they know that grilling a steak is very different than grilling a tri-tip, direct versus indirect heat. Maybe they can do a spreadsheet and explain derivatives. Maybe they can play Eric Clapton's solo on Crossroads note for note. Or maybe they can put on snow chains and catch a trout. Not at the same time. Just stringing crazy stuff together here. Maybe they can tie a perfectly symmetrical Windsor knot and crawl under the house and trap a possum. It's a really stream of consciousness right here, but I'm just thinking about your dad, and all the stuff that he did. It was amazing. And if there's something they don't know how to do, they'll figure it out. You have that too. That's your fathering energy. And this is a liberating quality, isn't it, to cultivate in our own lives? Sufficiency, self-sufficiency, whatever the opposite of helpless is, whatever the opposite of dependent on others is. Competency. Our fathering energy, I think it longs for mastery of the processes that formerly vexed us. To go into a job interview and to have done your research and to know everything there is to know about this company, their work product, and their culture. And then just to trust yourself and let go of the outcome. This is priceless. To look that interviewer in their eye and shake their hand and know that you've done everything you can do today and this is who I am, and just to be free. That's the gift competency gives you. Real self-esteem comes only from the cultivation of this excellence and this character. It doesn't come from empty praise. It doesn't come from being hugged. It doesn't come from people telling you how awesome you are. Self-esteem comes from one place, being esteemable. And you begin to feel good about yourself when you're good. How complicated is that? And when you overcome your fears and don't mind looking foolish, you can learn and even master anything. You get through those early awkward stages where, we all suck at first. No matter what you try to do, ballroom dancing, you're just crushing your partner's toes. You look like, you're having a seizure. But if you're not willing to get out there and look like an idiot, you don't get to become a dancer. But some of our egos are so big, I refuse to do anything that makes me look foolish. That's not competency. That's terror and self-absorption. So competency is not a veneer. It's a deep tissue commitment to risk. And finally, number 5, kindness. It wasn't my intention to make them all start with the K sound, but it just worked out that way. Compassion, kindness. That's it. Kindness. A good father is kind, aren't they? And they might not always be nice or cordial or polite. Sometimes they aren't even available emotionally or otherwise. But they need their downtime and their away time, just like everybody else. I'm not talking about the kind of kindness of a car salesman who approaches you when you walk onto a lot. This isn't an act. This is real. But beneath their rough exterior, I think there is an implacable heart of gold. That's what a good father is. Their unimpeachable love manifests itself in their concrete acts of kindness. They understand it's their sacred duty to provide for us and nurture our best qualities, even if that sometimes means not giving you everything that you want. But with your own long-term best self-interests in mind, they lean in and catch you every time you fall. So too, in our own fathering energy, we hold ourselves in high regard. And we see the best in us even when we don't feel the best. And this kindness toward ourselves shows us how to practice kindness toward others, especially when our passions cloud the water and we lose our way. So kindness is simple, and it simply works. Kindness never seeks to manipulate anyone or anything for its own gain. It sees the good and works toward that. There's a great Confucian saying, the inferior person asks, "What's in it for me?" And the superior person asks, "What is the right thing to do?" And those are two very different states of consciousness. The kindness then is a decision that we make in our will. It may not necessarily come from the heart. I don't know. It may not be just a warm, fuzzy feeling. Maybe kindness is just a choice that we make, regardless of how we feel at the moment. We choose kindness, and when we choose kindness, we bring light into a darkening world. So these, I think, are the 5 qualities of fathering energy. I know you feel them in you. Do you feel your fledgling courage? Do you honor the silence and nurturing space of your quietude? Are you supported by your own constancy and carried through by your competence? And do you feel yourself being loved in your own kindness? You have these qualities within you. I have these qualities within me. The question for our continued reflection is just simply this. Are these qualities latent? Are they hidden? Are they underdeveloped? Or are they practiced, habituated, and embodied in our daily behaviors? We can grow stronger. We can all make way for the fathering energy in us to rise to the surface. Whether we call it the archetypal masculine, I like that, or whether we just leave aside all attributions of masculinity and femininity and just think of it in a general sense as fathering energy. We can make a way for this fathering energy to rise up, to help heal ourselves, to help heal the ones we love, and to help heal a wounded world in such obvious, desperate need of healing. We are the ones. Now is the time. The rehearsal's over. And the curtain is already up. So today we honor our fathers, and all the fathers in this room, and all the fathers in every other room, men of courage, quietude, constancy, competence, and kindness. We honor them for their guiding hands and their loving hearts. And we always carry them with us in our hearts and in every fiber of our being. And today, we honor our own fathering energy. May it make us strong enough to love, brave enough to care, wise enough to know, and big enough to carry it all on these broad shoulders. Happy Father's Day, every single one of us here. Namaste. Thank you.